Stay tuned to the end of this episode where you could win 2 Retevis RT49Ps. One thing I forgot to mention, and I want to, is Retevis did send me these radios for a review and evaluation. Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Ham Radio Dude. I'm doing a new format this episode. I went out into the field and I tested the Retevis RT49Ps, and you're going to see me switching between the field and the office view when I have something to add. So let me know how you like that, but let's get started. Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Ham Radio Dude. Thanks for checking out the channel. Today, we're going to take a look at these Retevis FRS radios. Now, they're license-free radios, which means anybody can buy them, even off the shelves or on Amazon.com. Again, they don't require a license, and they're good for the whole family. So a couple of other features that Retevis mentions on the website that I figure I want to and should mention would be, first of all, the CTCSS or DCS privacy tones. What those are is if I have tones enabled on this radio and you have tones enabled on this radio and they're the same tone, we can talk to each other without another radio who doesn't have that tone enabled hearing us. That doesn't mean it's private because anybody who has that tone could listen in or talk in. Additionally, this radio comes with 6 AA batteries, which is 3 AA batteries per radio, and they are rechargeable. So that is nice, but the charger that comes with the radio doesn't have any indications on when the radio is done being charged. There is an indicator on the actual radio itself, but after 14 hours, and you're only supposed to keep these on for 12, it was still flashing, so I'm not sure about that. We'll talk about the actual battery life here toward the end of the video. And now the final thing right here I wanted to mention was these are also capable of receiving up to 11 NOAA weather radio frequencies, of course, depending on how far you are away from the NOAA weather radio tower. These being FRS, they're relatively inexpensive, 2 of them about $59. There's a couple of features of these radios in particular that make them nice for things like kayaking. There's waterproof capability. These are IP67 rated, which means they're protected from dust entering the radio, and additionally, it means that they're submersible into water and should be submersible for up to 30 minutes at 1 meter. I also noticed that these radios are advertised to float, so we're going to throw them in the water in a little bit. We're going to test the range on these, and I'm going to point out a couple of things. First things first, that I don't like. And even when the radio is off, you could still hit the button on the front and turn the lamp on. So when Meg and I went into my purse right here, and when we went to pull it out, the flashlights were on, which means it's draining battery. And you don't want to drain battery when you're not using the radio. So that's kind of a weird thing that you're going to want to be alert on. All right, let's go get lost. All right, so Meg's got her radio. You're on channel 5, right?
Channel 5. Nothing's lit up on the screen, though. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. They go into a standby mode. That's a great question. They go into a standby mode after a certain amount of time, so they go blank. And in order to fix that, you could just hit the power up, or you could just hit the transmit button on the side. It's the green button right here.
Okay.
So go ahead and hit that transmit button, hold it down, and say something to me.
Hello? Hello?
Very cool. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Now, Meg, if you hit this button right here, or just tap it once, it says call, what happens? Hello? Hello? Did you hear me?
Yes.
So I received a call, which anybody who's listening on that frequency would also receive that call. Hey, get lost. No, I'll get lost.
Bye.
I'm not going to make her walk. Oh, there she goes. Wait, can you hear me?
I could hear you.
She's getting lost.
Ooh.
Can you still hear me over there?
I could still hear you.
All right, cool. Goodbye. Best wishes over the bridge. Hey Meg, red berries, should I eat them?
Negative.
So I don't know how far we are yet apart from each other, but I'm gonna say that through wooded areas, and if we are a mile apart, whoever wrote the review online that these barely made it across his yard, that must have been a pretty inaccurate or unfair review. I hope to find you again one day. Well, we're at a new point of our adventure today where we're going to test the Retevis radios in the water because these are advertised as IP67 rated, which means they should be not only protected from dust entering the radio, but waterproof up to 1 meter for 30 minutes. Also, I have read that these float in the water, so we're going to throw them in here in just a second. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is make sure it floats, which surprisingly the radio floats. I would be kind of curious to see. It just turned itself on, though. I don't know if you heard that, but it just turned itself on. Anyway, we're just going to sit here for a few minutes and see until it gets too far out how long it'll float for before it starts sinking, and if it even does. Oh, I'll tell you what happened. There's a feature that's implemented. That's really cool. The feature that's implemented is when it goes and gets thrown in water, it automatically starts flashing the emergency light. So the emergency light started going off once it detected that water was surrounding it. All right, so I just wanted to show you real quick that the radio is off and the lights aren't on, the flashlight here. And I'm just gonna hold it like this, okay? And when I throw it in the water, now we'll see if it actually happens. There we go. It just got detected. I heard it, it beeped. The flashlight started going off. So again, you throw it in the water. After it's detected that the water hits it, even if the radio is off, the flashlight will start operating to let people know you're in distress. So that's kind of neat. All right, so I just wanted to kind of make a note here. A minute ago, after we took these out of the water, they were transmitting and then they weren't transmitting. My best guess is that there's water inside here in the speakers, which is common with any waterproof radio. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to dry out. Some people suggest throwing them in rice or whatever, but I just want to give you guys a quick demonstration that they still work. Here I am on channel 5 on this one, and I'm also on channel 5 on this one, and I'll be like test 1, 2. The reason you're getting the feedback is because the radios are so close together, but also NOAA weather radio is still working. If I hold it down here and I eventually get into now, the NOAA weather radio sounded kind of bad, but that is because we're too far away from the actual NOAA weather radio tower to pick them up precisely. Everything is still functional on these radios, so that lamp feature, even when the radio is off, the lamps go on. I'm still not sure I like that. However, when they got thrown in the water, the lamps activated immediately to let anybody know that, hey, maybe there's somebody in danger or there's somebody in the water there. So maybe my biggest complaint with these radios is just the button system here. And these button systems are kind of weird because if you want, for example, to go to NOAA weather radio, which is a long press on lamp, I'm going to hit it, and when I hit it, I'm going to put my finger up, and you'll see how long it takes for it to actually activate. There we go. So that was, I don't know, 2 seconds or something like that, maybe 3 seconds for it to activate, and it kind of seems long. So when you're trying to change channels, you got to do the same thing and wait for it. And then finally you could change channels. Now, I don't think that that's exactly the most efficient way to do things, and I actually think it becomes confusing for somebody who's never used radios before. But all that aside, you got a radio that floats. You got a radio that's waterproof for up to 30 minutes and still transmits just fine, as well as has some life-saving kind of light, illuminating lights on there too.
Okay, let's recap a couple of things here. I think you saw us out in the field enough. We talked about this radio. We tested it. 1.1 miles was our maximum distance, and that was through a forest with still a lot of leaves on the trees, or a lot of foliage on the trees. So I don't think that was too bad. You know, we made it a decent distance. We were able to keep communications. And of course, if we were on a lake or we were fishing, we'd probably have better line of sight. I got NOAA weather radio, so that was nice. I really like that functionality where the light turns on if it hits the water. Thinking about at night, if I'm drowning at night, somebody might be able to see me. I think that's great. When you hit the SOS button, and I do this only briefly, not only does it transmit, but it will illuminate a red light. So that is not a bad feature to have. And not only is it illuminating a red light, but it's also transmitting. And I know that's common in a lot of radios, but it is nice to have. I was not thrilled with the menu system or how you access all these by having to do like a 2-second press. And we talked about that already. One of the things I want to mention that I did test, but I wasn't able to show on video, was I did soak these in water for 30 minutes in a small bucket. And when I took them out, they still worked. And even overnight after I tried them out again, even after being in standby all night, it still worked. Hey, it's me in editing, and I just wanted to make a few notes about the submersible capabilities of this radio. Now, in order to get this radio to actually stay down, because it's a floating radio, I used some sort of weight on the radio. And when I took it out and I opened it up, everything actually appeared dry internally. And that's actually kind of surprising because even some of the other IP67 radios that I've tested, when I've opened them up, there's been a little bit of moisture inside. And the same thing with the light here. The light also didn't fog up, as I might see sometimes. I have been told that the batteries, if you use different batteries in the radio other than the ones provided, the radio won't float. I have not been able to test that. And then finally, I just want to mention, after you put your batteries in and you're going to put your cover on the radio, there's 2 screws, and you're going to want to make sure that those screws aren't just hand tight, but are actually screwed in. Otherwise, you're going to lose the capability for this thing to actually protect the water from coming into the radio. Real briefly, I just want to discuss battery life. Meg and I, we went out into the field and we operated these radios on high power channels, 2 watts, for about 2 hours. And I've actually had this one on standby now for 2 days, even through water. And it's still just showing half of the battery power. Now, I want to make a couple of notes. Meg and I, when we operated these for 2 hours, we were trying to kill the battery. So we were constantly talking back and forth. And so you're receiving and you're sending. Both of those things will consume more energy than this radio being in standby mode. With that, also we were on a high power channel. There's 2 different types of channels on these radios. There's high power and low power. High power, 2 watts, is going to consume more battery life when it outputs more power. And then low power is the opposite. I could assume that Retevis says 5 to 8 hours of continuous use. They probably mean on a low power channel, so keep that in mind. But we did 2 hours on high power. The radio still showed halfway, and then standby mode has been now what Retevis says 24 or more hours. It's been 2 days, so that's my experience with the battery life. Other things people ask is what kind of batteries could you use in the radio? The radio comes with nickel metal hydride batteries. However, you could use lithium-ion batteries on these or in these as well. Again, just keeping in mind that they may or may not float if you use different batteries than what's supplied with the radio. So I don't know if you could tell or not, but as this episode continued and progressed more and more, I started to look worse and worse, and I'm not feeling well. We're just going to wrap it up right now. So for $59, you get 2 radios. You get a charger that actually has a spot for the 2 radios. And by the way, they also do USB charging on the side of the radios. It comes with the batteries, and it has a list of things that we tested today that was actually pretty impressive. I guess my biggest 2 complaints would be I don't like the feel, and I suspect that the feel has to do with the reason it floats, and the lamp going on even when the radio is off is kind of weird to me. But regardless, I think these are fine radios for FRS. You go out and you're hunting, or you go out and you're on a kayak. And perhaps the reason they're bright green is so you can be seen easier if there was a search and a rescue type of situation. Retevis has been sending me radios for about a year, and what I really like about working with Retevis is the fact that when I have something negative to say about a radio, they don't just get all upset and cry. They say, hey, that was very fair and honest feedback. Thank you very much. And then what they do is they take that feedback that I give them from each radio and they work on another design or another product. I could appreciate that. So thank you, Retevis, for allowing me to have these radios for testing and evaluation, for listening to the consumer. And more importantly, I want to thank Retevis because this time they agreed to let me give away 2 radios that will be shipped from them. And to enter the drawing, the rules are simple. All you have to do is 3 things. You have to share this video, like this video, and comment below. Once you do those 3 things, you're going to be entered into this drawing, which will take place on November 26th. Don't forget to subscribe and check back later. I'll pin the message above on who the winner is. Thanks again for checking out the channel. I'm Ham Radio Dude 73. Goodbye.